Well, let's keep that markets theme going with Jun Bei Liu from 10cap. Jun Bei, thanks so much for your time. Our markets seem to do pretty well today. Do you think the volatility from the US is coming to an end, or is there still a long way to go?
Look, volatility will be here to stay until we get clarity. And certainly feels like there will be some kind of deal soon. But of course, we don't know. Now, I think what's happening is a bit of fatigue from investor front, that we're a little bit fatigued of dealing with the yo-yoing of where the tariff might go. I think ultimately, 2 weeks ago, we have seen the worst of the uncertainty. And now the whatever the tariff might end up to be is more or less just a number. We're waiting for a deal. We're waiting for clarity. Lots of investors have been sitting on the sideline, and certainly today we are seeing a lot more confidence coming back into the market. Some of the companies that earnings are not so much impacted by the tariff. We are seeing quite a lot of buying, not so much today, but in the last couple of weeks, just gradually seeing the investor coming back. So look, there's a lot of volatility, but this is where some of the long-term opportunity present themselves.
Yeah, where do you see the big risks right now for investors? Is it a slowdown from China's economy?
Look, I think the slowdown is clearly a big risk, but I think the biggest risk is that we're watching very closely is the rise of the US 10-year yield. Now, last couple of weeks, we've seen that 10-year yield moved up quite sharply. That's very unusual. Usually when people worry about economic slowdown, you actually have the bonds rising, which means the yield will fall. And this time, actually, it's the opposite. So, that it has caused a bit of concern. Does that then create tightening financial condition? Then it's a bad combination. Right now, we're seeing stabilization. So it certainly seems to be market is a little bit more relaxed about that. So there's still plenty of debt around. The interest rate is not rising higher. And ultimately, if we have clarity in terms of what's happening with the trade side, if we make deal with any market, we will see a share market moving higher definitively from here.
Overnight, the big tech company Nvidia was sold off heavily in the US, really due to tariffs on computer chips. I mean, what's the outlook looking like for big semiconductor makers like Nvidia and TSMC in Taiwan?
Look, at this stage, it's harder to go because we don't know what the deal might look like. Should there be sanction? This almost feels a bit like a sanction of doing business with China. Clearly, massive impact for those businesses. But my view is that, look, ultimately, the goal was to get a deal done between US and China. So we do think they will get into the room at some point. But meanwhile, you will see a lot of volatility for those big tech there in the US. Now, for investors, it's important to segregate what are some of the other growth companies that we can buy that's not impacted by that. And there's plenty here in Australia. We're a little bit somewhat insulated from what is happening over there.
Yeah, what are some of the sectors that are doing reasonably well at the moment with all this uncertainty and volatility?
Yeah, interestingly, we all know the defensive sectors are doing well. So companies whose earnings are not impacted. So the likes of Telstra, the likes of Bramble, your true defensives. And that there's also a property sector is actually holding up pretty well as well, simply because they're beneficiary of lower interest rate here in Australia. Our domestic consumer names is sort of in the last couple of weeks on the way higher after the sell-off, simply because we're a little bit insulated. Lower prices globally probably is good for us as consumer. So net, we are seeing some of those more Australia home-centric businesses doing a bit better.
And then once there is certainty and we know what the tariffs are going to be long term, do you think investors will buy back into the market and it could get back close to record highs again?
Oh, look, might take some time, but it will happen. Once we have stabilization, we will see the company that's been sold off rally quite aggressively. Right now, you're already seeing buying into those growth businesses, things like REA, things like Promedicus. You are seeing quite aggressive buying across those sectors. But soon, once we have clarity, you will have tariff impacted sectors rally quite sharply.
Jun Bei Liu, the co-founder of 10cap. Great to have you on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.